What's good, YouTube? It's me, your boy Squiddy back in another video. Today, I want to talk to you guys about a couple of rogue decks that might actually be decent after Agov. Yeah, believe it or not, these decks are getting some support. I mean, I don't know if it's good support, but time will tell. So, starting at the beginning, Watts. Guys, Watts are actually getting some cool support in the upcoming Agov set. I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily good enough to make them competitive, but they are quite decent. And what I mean is they're actually getting 3 cards, the first of which is Watt Tuna, which is a free extender that can attack directly, of course, in line with the rest of the Watts. You can special summon it from your hand when you inflict battle damage with another Watt monster, and then when he attacks and inflicts damage, you can actually tribute him alongside another monster from either your hand or field, and then summon a Watt synchro monster whose level equals the tributed monster's levels. So effectively, with one Watt Cobra, you can now do a crazy play going second where you can attack directly, use the effect to add a Watt Tuna, special it from hand, and then use the effect to actually synchro off into the new monster, which is a level 8 Watt Taurus. Watt Taurus can attack directly as well, and then when he does, you can actually shuffle back a Watt Tuner from your graveyard and a face-up Thunder non-tuner you control, aka, I guess generally himself in this line of combo, and then summon out one of your existing Watt Synchros, which would be Watt Hydra, which can actually banish a monster directly from your deck, which is really, really cool, or a card rather. So if you are playing something fancy like a Necrophase, you can actually just banish that directly from the deck and then banish 5 cards from both players' decks. Or you can just go into the Watt Chimera, which is a little more tame, using his effect to shuffle back an opponent's card back to the top of their deck. So just like really, really cool options. They're also getting a free spell card that allows you to add a special summon a copy of a Watt monster with a different name from your deck by targeting it on the field. So just like a free pseudo e-tele in the form of a continuous spell card that I think is really, really cool. It's especially neat because you think about the existing Watt cards like Watt Giraffe, which when he takes a swing directly at your opponent and inflicts battle damage, your opponent actually cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the turn. So it has a lot of neat synergies, a lot of neat effects that are pre-existing with the existing Watt support. Now, the caveat is the Watt support is really, really bad. The old support is like 15 years old and it's just absolutely terrible, but there are some cool ways you could probably splash this in just with Watt Cobra that I thought I would mention it as an honorable mention. I mean, the fact that we're getting Watt support nearly, over 10 years later is just really, really cool in my opinion, so I'm glad that the Watt Feathered Friends are seeing some play. The next deck is a bit of a fan favorite because people were playing this previously when we did get new Shark support, and that is, of course, the Sharks. The Sharks are really, really neat because we are getting some new support for this existing deck. And if you guys remember the toxicity of Right-Hand Shark in tandem with Crooked Cook, then you're probably going to hate this deck. But I mean, this is still going to be a combo that exists, so you guys better get the Kaijus ready or the XYZ's Encores or whatever the heck can actually get rid of a Crooked Cook. Now, there are some really, really cool, neat cards coming out with this archetype. First and foremost, there's some new Armored XYZ cards. So there's actually an Armored XYZ called XYZ Armor Fortress that you can just overlay on top of an existing rank 3 or rank 4 XYZ monster you control by transferring the materials. And then you can actually detach 2 materials from him to add a number of Armored XYZ cards with different names from your deck to your hand. Now, the Armored XYZ cards are actually new. We're getting a spell card and a trap card. The spell card is Armored XYZ. You target a face-up monster you control and an XYZ monster in your graveyard, and you equip that monster in the graveyard to the monster in the field, and then you gain a plethora of effects where the monster can actually attack twice in a row, and you can also gain attack equal to the equipped monster. So it kind of enables some OTK shenanigans that Sharks were previously had a little bit of a leeway for in the anime, but I don't think it was really capitalized on. They're getting full Armored XYZ, which is a trap card that allows you to XYZ summon an XYZ monster if there's an XYZ monster on the field. And you can also banish it from the graveyard, then target an XYZ monster you control, equip another XYZ from your field or graveyard to it with the effect where it gains the attack, and then if it would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you destroy this card instead. So it's just like a free +2, which is really, really neat, especially when you think about Buzzsaw Shark and the fact that it just does everything on an its own. You're able to use it as a level 3 or level 5 to go into your XYZ plays. You can go into like a Rebarian Shark and then overlay that with a full armored Black Ray Lancer. And then he's a level 4, so you can overlay into the XYZ Armor Fortress. Unfortunately, XYZ Armor Fortress cannot be used to make Zeus, but still you're getting like a huge overlay, kind of like a Zodiac mechanic, which I think is really, really neat. Now, it doesn't stop there because we're also getting the full armor Dark Lancer, which is a little bit better, I think, because he can actually be used to overlay on top of any rank 5 or rank 6 monster you control. It's a lot like Zeus, but you don't have to have battled. And then this actually gains 300 attack for every material that's attached to it. So if you think in the standard line where you're actually using Buzzsaw Shark to overlay directly into a Valiant Shark Lancer, and then with Valiant Shark Lancer, you can actually overlay on top an existing card called Full Armored Crystal Zero Lancer for free, because a lot of these older cards actually had the Pseudo Zeus effect where you just overlay on top of them. And then you would overlay on top of that the Full Armor Dark Ray Lancer, which already has 4 materials beneath it, which means it's gaining a whopping 1200 attack, going to 4000 off the bat, which is pretty incredible if you ask me for a normal summon. And then it doesn't stop there. It has another effect where it says once per turn you can target an XYZ card in your graveyard, add it to your hand. So there are some XYZ cards that you can add back to your hand, including the armored XYZ cards we just went over. And then the other effect is if this card is equipped with an equipped card, you can actually attach one monster your opponent controls to this card as material, non-targeting. Really, really neat. And we are getting a searcher called XYZ On Trust, which says add one armored XYZ card from your deck or graveyard to your hand, and then you can make the levels of 2 monsters you control become 3 or 5 until the end of the turn. So it's just really, really neat that we're getting a searcher as well for all of this. And sharks might be a little more cohesive now that we're just playing them like Zodiacs and overlay, and just making a whopping huge Zeus if we want to. Can make like an almost 6 material Zeus, so that's really, really optional. For a toolbox, I think there's just so many options, and it's just really, really neat. If you guys are a fan of Zodiac like I am, this is definitely something that you guys can test out. Moving on to another rogue deck is actually these guys, the Nouvelles. If you guys love French cuisine like I do, then you probably remember when these guys actually got released, and unfortunately they were a little too restrictive to actually be competitive, but now we're actually getting some cool support that makes them decently good. The first of which is Poissonnière de Nouvelle, which is the fish chef that we saw previously in the fish recipe. So it's really, really cool that we're actually getting these monsters that were inscribed on the spell cards as real monsters. So we're probably waiting for that dude that also did the Hungry Burger on the trap and the other spell card, right? But he's not released yet. But this card is really, really neat because it's a pendulum monster that you can place in your pendulum zone. And if you control a ritual monster, you can actually target a monster on the field, special summon this card, then change the targeted monster's battle position, meaning you can actually change the battle position of your opponent's cards, which is really, really useful. If you guys remember, some of these existing Nouvelles actually have to tribute your opponent's attack position monsters. And unfortunately, if they put everything in defense mode, that makes it hard. But now with this new card, it automatically does that. And not only that, you summon herself as an extender for free. And when she's summoned, she actually gets an effect, which is really, really cool, where you can add a level 1 ritual monster or a recipe card from your deck to your hand. This is just bonkers for this deck, guys. This is a free extender that changes the battle position of a monster opponent controls and also adds a level 1 ritual monster or a recipe card. Like, this is crazy. It's an in-engine searcher. And she has another effect where you can banish any number of recipe cards from our graveyard, not rescue. And if you do, special summon a Nouvelles monster ritual from our hand with a level equal to the number banished. So it has a lot of effects where we can cheat out ritual monsters from our hand as well, all rolled up into one card. But it doesn't even stop there. We are also getting a spell card called Concours de Cuisine, so Confectionery Contest, which is a quick play spell card that says special summon both one Nouvelle pendulum monster and a Pâtissier pendulum monster from your hand deck or extra deck, one on each field. So we're going to give our opponent a card as well, which is the existing Pâtissier Couverture that no one really had a use for, but now we can actually summon this monster out. And if this monster in the monster zone is destroyed, we can actually place it into our pendulum zone, meaning we are able to access pendulum summoning mechanic in this deck because Pâtissier Couverture, we give that to our opponent, we destroy it, we get a level 1 pendulum 1 scale, and then the other card, Poissonnière de Nouvelle, is a pendulum 8, so we're potentially able to start penduluming out monsters to get their effects and then tribute them off for the Nouvelles, which is really cool. That this is a quick play spell card, basically a Kaiju Slumber that does one monster to each field, and then it doesn't stop there, of course. During your main phase, you can actually banish this card from your graveyard, then target one face-up monster on the field. It gains 200 attack for each recipe card in the graveyard. So we can actually boost the attack of our recipes. Which recipe is better, the baking recipe or the fish recipe? It's really, really neat that this is essentially an e-telly for the Poissonniere de Nouvelles, which unlocks the Pendulum Summon mechanic and unlocks the effective Poissonniere, which allows us to start adding cards to our hand and adding starters to our hand. It's really, really cool. And then when this card is actually tributed, and you can actually place it in the Pendulum Zone, so we can actually tribute this off for our fish recipe to summon out the Base de Nouvelle, and then from there, destroy the opposing Pedestal Couverture. Sorry, Couverture, we have to say bye, but she comes up to our other scales, so we are able to take advantage of the Pendulum Summoning mechanic. Really, really neat that they brought that out. And then the next rogue deck that I think might get some decent support is actually the Pendulum mechanic, because we're getting a bunch of Supreme King Zark related monster support. That's really, really cool. These guys have a huge essay, so I won't even bother trying to delve into them, but they are essentially awesome extenders, and we are actually getting an Exceed the Pendulum link, which is Beyond the Pendulum 2.0, that allows you to do a plethora of things, because she's a link 3, so we can actually rank up into this off of the Beyond the Pendulum and just go ham. She allows us to add a face-up Pendulum monster from our extra deck to our hand on summon, and during the main phase, you can actually summon from your hand or graveyard in defense position a Pendulum monster with a level between the Pendulum scales of the 2 Pendulum scales that you control. And this is a quick effect, so you can actually bring back stuff during your opponent's turn as well. It just gains so much value for the deck, and the Zark cards are actually getting a lot of support. So it's really, really neat that in this set, we're actually getting a card called Pendulum Evolution, which allows us to add a Pendulum monster with 1500 attack and a different name. So it searches for a lot of things. And we're also able to search for Supreme King Dragon Darkworm now off of one of their newer cards, which is really, really, really neat that they actually brought this mechanic to life off the anime, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't seen the anime, but this card called the Lightwing Dragon actually allows us to add a Supreme King Dragon or Supreme King Gate Pendulum from our deck to our hand. And it's a quick play spell card, so that's just insane. The best form of Rhoda that's a quick play spell card. That's just still can't get over it. And we're also getting another card called Supreme Gate Magician, which is one of the best cards, because this card is a pseudo extender that allows herself to be special summoned very easily while you control a Supreme Gate card in the Pendulum Zone. And then when she is summoned, you can actually add a card that mentions Supreme King Zark from our deck to our hand, meaning we are going to be able to add that Rhoda for free directly from our deck, and then use that to add more cards. So this is just really, really neat. I think this Pendulum deck was actually decent enough where it top forward a regional tournament in China in the OCG, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a Magician infused Supreme King Zark deck. So this actually might come to life. There are a lot of options that I think people are missing in Agov. They're just kind of grazing over the good cards, but there are actually so much legacy support for existing decks and rogue decks, and they're actually very, very powerful. So I thought I'd make this video to talk to you guys about that. And if there's anything we actually missed in Agov that's an oversight that it might actually be good as well, definitely let me know in the comments below. And other than that, we'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye, guys.